Hey guys, as promised, in our next video we're going to be talking about elapsed time. And so before we can start working with elapsed, yes, I did spell that right. Elapsed time, we have to know what it is. So just with the adult who's with you right now, pause the video real quick and tell them what you think elapsed time is. Okay, elapsed time is how much time has gone by, or how long it takes to happen. Okay, so you could measure elapsed time for almost anything. You could measure how long it takes you to get to school. You could measure how long it takes you to brush your teeth. You could measure how much time it takes you to do your homework or whatever it is. Okay, but we can also use elapsed time for a couple of different things. If they give us a start time and the elapsed time, we can find out what time something ended. So maybe a movie started at 5:15, it lasted for an hour and 45 minutes, and it got over with at whatever time. Or we could find out, like I said, how much time is in between. Start brushing your teeth at 8:30, get done brushing your teeth at 8, whatever, and then find out how much time is in between. And then we could also work backwards. If they give us the end time and the elapsed time, we could find out what time something started. So that's the whole reason behind practicing with elapsed time. The thing with it, though, is you can't just add or subtract like normal. And the reason for that is when we're working with time, we have two different units at least. We would have hours and minutes if we're working with like a clock, and sometimes we would have months and weeks and days and whatever else. So when we're working with time, we can't add or subtract like we normally would. We're going to have to go about it using different methods. And most of the time, I like to just use an analog clock. Okay, remember this thing we talked about in the first video? We're going to be using this a lot for our lesson today. Okay, let's look at some examples, and I'm just going to do several problems with you because it's easier to have them in your book than it is to have them in our notebook until we know what we're talking about. After we've learned it a little bit, then we can go back and add some things to our notebook. So let's get into our book. We're on page 623, talking about time here. We know, based on our chart that we put in our book, that 1 hour equals however many minutes. Go ahead and fill that blank in. Should be 60. 1 hour is 60 minutes, and we even kind of counted them up on here. Okay. A computer company claims its laptop has a battery that lasts 4 hours. The laptop actually ran for 200 minutes before the battery ran out. Did the battery last 4 hours? So remember, when we're kind of comparing things, we have to have the same unit. I can't compare hours and minutes because they're not the same. So that means I have to make everything hours or everything minutes. And since hours go into minutes, it's easier just to find out how many minutes there are, right? Which I guess they already did for us. 200 minutes here. Okay, but we have to know how many hours and minutes that is in order to compare it to the 4 hours that the computer company claims that it will last. So we're going to start with those minutes that they gave us. And we're going to do the same rules that we've been doing except for the metric system. Whenever we go from from small to big, from minutes to hours, we divide. because we're going to have less big things than small things. And then we have to find that small unit and use the base number for it. In this case, it's 60. 60 minutes in 1 hour, that goes here. So 200 divided by 60, we'll just use some space over here. And this goes back to when we were working with powers of 10. When I am multiplying and dividing with zeros on here, I can just look at this base number. What's the closest? 6 can get to 20. 3, which is 18. But in this case, it'll be, the 3 will be over here because we're looking at 200, and this will be 180. And then we subtract with 20 left over. So it'll be 3 hours, 20 minutes. Remember that leftover goes there. And now we can compare them. 3 hours, 20 minutes, greater, less than, or equal to 4 hours. We know that is less than 4 hours. Okay, so when we're working with converting time, we do the same thing that we've been doing. You start with your number, multiply or divide by the base number of the smaller unit. Oh, I don't know what just happened there. And then if you have leftover stuff, that goes over there as your answer. Here is that chart that you're going to be using quite a bit for this assignment. We also have that written in our notebooks already, but it's also in your book so that you can have that. Okay, let's look at this example here, the try this on the next page. And I want to use this example because it's teaching you how to use your clocks. Okay, Robert's soccer team needs to be off the soccer field by 12:15 p.m. Each game is at most 1 3/4 hours long. What time should the game begin to ensure that the team finishes on time? So we're trying to figure out what time should they start so that they're off the field in time, right? And they give us kind of a pattern to think about here. 1/4 hour is 15 minutes, which we saw on our clocks. We did that. So if 1/4 is 15 minutes, how many minutes would 3/4 be? It'd be like 15 plus 15 plus 15, or 15 times 3, because there's 3/4 hours, which is 45. So 45 minutes, okay? So if they have to be off the field by 12:15, that's where these hands are at, 12:15, then let's go back 45 minutes. And we want to do that because that's going to take the minutes away, and then we can focus on the hours. So here's our clock. Let's make our hands look like their hands. They have to be off by 12:15. And remember, if each of these is 15 minutes, and I have to go back 45 minutes, then I'll just count backwards as I go. So here's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Okay. Then we'll come back up here. So 45 minutes earlier is what time? If you look back at your clock. Remember, it's not 12 anymore. It's now 11 because we went past the 12. So we're back to AM. 11:30 a.m. with time. Please make sure you're using AM and PM in your answers because the clock repeats itself every 12 hours. It'll be PM for 12 hours and AM for 12 hours, and I have to know which one you're talking about. Have to pay attention to your unit here, AM or PM. Okay, then we subtract the hour, so we were at 11:30. If we subtract an hour from that, let's go back to our clock here. So we're at 10:30. Remember, if we're in between, that means we're not 11 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. We're somewhere in the middle. And 11:30 is definitely in the middle. So if we go back an hour then, that's easy. Brings us to 10:30. a.m. So the game should begin at 10:30. Oh, now it's crashed. Please hold. Sorry about that. 10:30 a.m. to make sure that they're done by 12:15. Okay, let's look at some more examples. These top ones here and some of the other practice problems you're going to be doing today focus on converting just time to time. You're not worried about elapsed time on them, you're just worried about converting. So I'm going to do one with you. We're having 540 minutes and we want to know how many hours that will be. When we're going minutes to hours, we have to know which is biggest and which is smallest. So are minutes bigger or are hours bigger? Hours are bigger, so we're going small to big. Whenever we go small to big, which operation do we use? Division. 540 divided by, and then we have to find that base unit for the small number, or the small unit. There's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so we'll have 540 divided by 60. Okay, same thing, I've got some zeros on here. 6 and 54, doesn't that go in? Let's see. It does. I found it, did you? Goes in 9 times. So 540 minutes is 9 hours. Okay, same thing here, same thing here. You've got a mixed measure here, so you'll have some leftover from somewhere. That leftover, that remainder will come here. Okay? Now let's look at an elapsed time one. If we start at 9:17, let's put that on our clock. 9, 15, 16, 17. That's why I made your hands long enough to where it would touch. Be exact. 9:17. The elapsed time is 5 hours and 18 minutes. So that's how long it took somebody to do something. Oops, this one. 5 hours and 18 minutes. So I'm going to count 18 minutes on the minute hand first. Just like when we did mixed numbers and we had a whole number and a fraction, we always would do the fraction first. Same thing with elapsed time. You have hours and minutes. Always do your minutes first because as the minute hand moves, your hour hand will move a little bit too. Okay? So we start at 9:17. I'm going to add 18 minutes to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, see how my hour hand moved a little bit? If yours didn't, make sure it's somewhere between the 9 and the 10. Okay? And now we add 5 hours. Hang on to your minute hand. Don't let it move. 1, 2, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it should be somewhere between the 2 and the 3. And if it's not touching the 3 yet, then it means it's still 2 something. So it'll be 2:35. That's what that minute on the 7 is. Okay, so let's go back here. End time, 2:35. And now we have to know if it's AM or PM. If we start in the morning and we go past the 12, remember at the 12 is where it changes between AM and PM. Since we went past the 12 with our hour hand, that means it's now PM. 2:35 PM. Okay? For this one is the same as what we just did. 6 is like that example where they give us the time you have to be done, the elapsed time, find the start. Here's where you're finding the middle. See you guys.